This is Valerie Van Boeven with the Senior Care Industry Netcast, where leaders with 3 or more years of experience in the senior care market share their advice. So let's get to it. In a few sentences, tell us who you are and what you do.
Hi, I am Bobbi Carducci. I'm a certified caregiving consultant and educator. I lead a caregiver support group. I'm the co-host of the podcast Rodger That, guiding you through the heavy haze of dementia. But the most important thing I do is educate caregivers on how to respond to dementia behaviors.
That is really nice. And so I'm going to make sure that Rodger That and all your other information, your websites and that are all with this video so people can tune in and listen. So dealing with dementia behaviors can be really challenging. I always use my dad as an example. My dad is very docile. He's a very kind person. He started out with vascular dementia a few years ago. And as a result of lots of things, uncontrolled diabetes, stroke, he's had bypass, blah, blah. So, and it was shocking. It was shocking to see the change in his behavior. And he was, I guess, he didn't do anything necessarily to anybody, but he was very threatening. And and so that was not like him. And dealing with dementia behavior like that is, and he took off. We actually had to call the police. He walked off down a trail and he was gone for probably 6 hours.
Wow.
We didn't know that's where he went, but eventually we figured out where he went. So anyway, he's straightened out now. He's much better. He is on medication, but it took a long time to get him there. And now he's, still has dementia, but he's very, back to being funny and kind and reading and, he's not threatening at all. And so anyway, it can be challenging. It can be scary.
It absolutely can. And that's one of the things that so many people who come into the caregiving world for the first time don't understand how this person that they've known and loved for so long is all of a sudden behaving very differently. And I hear these questions all the time. Is this normal? Is anybody else dealing with this? And what happens is sometimes the caregiver thinks that they're doing it on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And they're absolutely not. I mean, this is a devastating long-term brain disease, and their brain is in control of everything, just like ours are. So if we can look at it, I'm so sorry.
Oh, you're all right.
From the point of view of what is it that's upsetting them and how I can make that more comfortable for them. Mm-hmm. And ramp down the tension. That's the absolute first thing that you want to do, is whatever it is to make them feel more secure.
Yeah, I think in hindsight, we also noticed that as we told stories to each other about his behavior over even the 5 years prior to us knowing that he had vascular dementia, there were outbursts and weird things that happened. Weird things that he had told me, or he would have like an episode of anger that was really strange, and it would dissipate and go away. And those, I often wonder if other people notice that once they have a diagnosis and they understand what their loved one is suffering with, if they look back in hindsight and think, yeah, the last 5 years, these weird things would happen. And that was probably a precursor to where we are now, but nobody ever knew it. I mean, my dad told me some crazy stories that never happened. And he believed wholeheartedly that they did. And he had a couple of really angry outbursts that were completely unlike him, and then would go back to being his normal self. So, and the whole family witnessed this, but we never put it all together that there was something else wrong because it was sporadic. And
yeah, it's usually, you mentioned 5 years. It could be even longer than that before the first brain connections start popping in and out like a flickering light bulb, or being disturbed completely. So what you're describing is, definitely progression of the disease, and a lot of us don't recognize it until it's become so constant that you can't ignore it anymore. And one thing I like to tell caregivers, as far as they're telling stories about things that never happened, is the brain is a wonderful storyteller.
It is.
And I compare it to, having a very vivid dream, and we wake up and our heart is pounding because something frightened us. But when we wake up, we are able to tell the difference between being awake and what our brain has told us, and they can't do that. So they absolutely believe whatever it is that they're telling you. And our telling them that that didn't happen or that's not true is only going to make them suspicious of you.
Yes, yes, he has told me, even in the last couple of years, told me a story that, and here we are, full on dementia, and knowing that, but clarity, like, and detail, like amazing detail, that about the story about someone who came to visit him, and it was an old friend, someone I had met, knew when I was a little girl, and he told me this entire story, and I was like, oh, and I talked to his wife, and she was like, that never happened. It's like, oh my
God. One of the people,
like, yeah, I totally believed it, and I knew he had them, but but he was so on it. I mean, he totally knew
absolutely
what he was saying, and I was like, wow,
that's
nice.
One of the women that was in my caregiver support group, her husband absolutely insisted that he was at Obama's inauguration.
Yeah, well, oh, I mean, that's pretty cool. But
Yeah.
yeah. So things like that are, I mean, he can still tell me a story to this day, and it's all these details and people that I know who he's talking about. It's very possible that it happened, and and he doesn't do that so much now. But when his medications are off, or perhaps he needs a medication change, it's very very. It's amazing how creative the brain is. He should write books. Okay, so I'll get back to my interview questions. I know we get off the topic. I love discussing this when I can relate to it a little bit. What is the best thing about serving aging adults?
Well, quality of life is so important. And by working with families, both the person in care and the caregiver, I help them find ways to really appreciate the moments in what I call moments of clarity in that special time they have together. I very often tell caregivers, as difficult as it is day to day, to understand that you are giving them many more good days than they would have had otherwise.
Right, absolutely. All right, well, tell us what other successful leaders in the senior care industry, or maybe organizations that you've been a part of or been around, who has made a difference for you, or what organizations do you think are doing a great job out there?
Well, Denise Brown of the Caregivers Academy, who trained so many of us in this world, is one of the people that I always refer to. And she was the very first guest on our podcast.
And she's been with us too. I love Denise Brown. So awesome. That's great.
Danelle LeBlanc of Caregiver Transitions. And then, of course, Brooks Kenny of Us Against Alzheimer's. Those three, and so many more. I mean, I could go on all afternoon, but each one of them is really reaching out into the caregiving community and helping others find their way into this world so we can help so many more.
Yeah, absolutely. Great list of people, and all our mentors and folks that have really helped just thousands of people in their careers and lifetimes. So, all right, let's talk about online marketing a little bit. Now, you have a podcast, and I'm sure you have a website and all of that. Online marketing can be challenging, and in the last year, in 2020, it was really hard. We couldn't really network together. I know things are changing now and getting better, but I think we're all still a little leery, especially depends on our age. And I think I went into a restaurant with my husband yesterday without a mask on. Now we're both vaccinated, and We have low occurrence here. We're in the Midwest, in the middle of the United States. We're not in a big city necessarily. And I said, we just walked in here without our masks on. And he said, yeah, we can do that now a little bit. I said, yeah, a little bit, but I don't know about Walmart.
Right.
So, so it's getting better, but certainly may have a little ways to go. So online marketing has become pretty important. And I think even just from a technology perspective, Zoom, podcasts, all of these things have become more prevalent in our lives. So how has online marketing changed for you? Or what
Well, and in a weird way, it's become easier because so many people are using Zoom that they never did before. And because it's international, are able to reach people in a number of different countries, which absolutely helped. But, having that one-on-one communication, if you're doing a workshop and you have people that are in the audience who are able to, share their emotion in a way that they don't online, it's stifled it a bit.
yeah.
But I think the more that we continue to reach out to each other, not only in the United States, but also across the world, um, the more of us that are doing this, the more we can educate people and more we can have an impact on these families that are coming. You and I know the tsunami is not only coming, it's here. And millions of people across the world. This is another pandemic that's not getting the attention that COVID did. And I understand that because the people that are dying from these diseases are dying slowly. And, the impact isn't, and what I call, we are an army of millions who are doing this one at a time. So we're not as visible.
Yeah.
But this work that we're all doing is so important in doing things like this. You and I supporting one another and putting the word out about Denise and Danelle and Brooks and all the other people that are doing this has an immense impact in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I do agree with you. The one-on-one connection is challenging still, and you really do get a more impactful sometimes message in a conference where you can see someone live. I mean, anything live is going to be more impactful, right? But but the
But
good
one of the
side,
ways that I've overcome that to some degree, and is with the either Zoom or phone one-on-one phone calls with caregivers, so they can tell me exactly what's going on that's upsetting them, that's challenging for them in that day, and together we can work out a way to deal with it to lessen the impact and the stress in their home.
yes, absolutely. Um, uh, and and Zoom has, I think there's been a lot of really good things that have come through all of this. You're right about being able to reach out and speak to just about anybody in the world who has an internet connection, and to all of us learn together. Those of us who always have had an internet connection for the last several years, as long as we've been adults, understand how to use more technology like Zoom. Those things are awesome. And then and eventually we'll get back to that, being able to do conferences where we all attend, and that's probably coming for a lot of people this year, even this fall.
Absolutely. And I think Zoom also helps us to reach out to the millennials and the other younger people who believe that somebody my age just doesn't understand technology or, or what some of their challenges are. And I think that's brought us back together too, because one of my goals is always to reach out to diverse communities, whether it's the LGBTQ or the Hispanic community or a community of young adults who feel like we don't understand and we're not there for them, and we are, because there's millions of them.
That's true. That's true. It's nice. The seniors that are older than me that are able to use they're very resilient. So if we look at our baby boomers, um, extremely resilient group of people who've in a lot of times and in a lot of cases been through way more than this pandemic brought to them. So they're very resilient people, and the learning curve is pretty short for most of our seniors. They're willing to learn. Give them the
Yes,
device.
definitely flexible.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. What piece of advice would you give to other senior care providers?
Um, I think we've kind of touched on it, to reach out to one another for support. Every time I participate in a workshop or a conference or a Zoom meeting with somebody in this world, I learn something every single time. And we're not competing with one another. We're all
Oh,
here for the same goal.
yep.
And I am happy to share any knowledge that I've gleaned. And I am happy to say, oh, I hadn't thought of that. Thank you. I think the more we support, the best thing we can do is support each other and see that we are a community of caring individuals.
Yes, we can never, being competitive, you know, it has its pros and cons. And truly, there are so many people that need assistance and need help and need outreach
Yeah,
that,
there's plenty of work for all of us.
right, we'll never run out of things to do and people to see and people to help. So there's really no competition. I mean, it's as many people as you can bring into your fold and assist in your lifetime. It's, the sky's the limit if you think about it that way.
I firmly
But
believe that service to others is the rent we pay for being here.
yeah, really, I do. I totally agree. I'm a nurse by trade, and service to others has been my entire adult life. And so it's definitely, I think, as we perpetuate and continue that in whatever way we can, that's awesome. All right. Last question, supposed to be a fun one. Some people are like, oh, I don't know. When you have a win in life or in business, when you celebrate, how do you celebrate?
Well, do my Snoopy happy dance in my kitchen with
Yay.
with a glass of wine.
Yeah, that's
And
good.
then I continue, because every time I see a smiling face or we have an aha moment for a caregiver, that's a celebration for me.
Mhm.
But definitely the wine and the Snoopy happy dance.
That's perfect. That is a perfect. It's my first Snoopy happy dance, and I'll take it because that's my one of my favorite characters. So awesome. Well, thank you, Bobby, for being on the show and for sharing your wisdom with us and for sharing about yourself, your show, and all the things that you do for caregivers. So
Thank you
thank you
so
very much.
much for having me. This has been a delight. Let's stay in touch.
Yeah, let's do.